From GLP-1s to skincare products, peptides are gaining attention for their potential health benefits. We have Dr. Rodney Young, Regional Chair of Family and Community Medicine from TTU HSC School of Medicine, to talk about and explain what peptides are and whether they belong in your daily routine. Dr. Young, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. And to start things off, Dr. Young, can you tell us what peptides are and how do they work?
So peptides, it's one of those words that doctors use a lot, but basically what they are short chains of amino acids. So if you remember anything from science in high school, amino acids are what we call the building blocks of proteins.
Yes.
So these are basically short protein segments that can accomplish a number of different things. The body makes them naturally, and then we also have them available as medications or supplements too.
That is very interesting. And when you brought up amino acids, I'm like, oh, yep, I remember being in my science class.
Flashbacks to that?
I did get flashbacks, yes. And Dr. Young, what are some common peptides that people might be taking and they don't even realize they're taking it?
Well, so normally people, at least until recently, they didn't use the word peptide. That's not a normal part of our vernacular. But for example, everybody knows about Ozempic, right?
Oh,
or
yes.
Wegovy, Mounjaro, Zepbound. Those are all peptides. The P in GLP-1 is peptide.
Mm-hmm.
So those are common medicines. Other things that have been around forever, like insulin, for example, is a peptide.
Yeah.
And oxytocin's a medicine that's used commonly to help augment labor in women that are in labor. Those are peptide medications. There's actually more than 80 approved peptide drugs that have gone through the FDA approval process.
Very cool. They're also in skincare products as well, right?
Yeah, it's actually quite common. A number of approved skincare products will have peptides that assist the process of collagen production, which helps to strengthen and improve the resiliency of skin. There are also collagens in other parts of the body, and there are peptides that signal and mediate those processes as well. So saying, I'm taking a peptide is sort of like saying I'm taking a pill. Well, what does it do? Well, there's peptides that do all kinds of things, just like there's pills that do all kinds of things.
And why are peptides I feel like they're so popular right now. Why are they getting the attention?
Well, I think, because in the moment, first off, there are a lot of things they can do that assist body functions. So the way tissues heal, the way they adapt or respond. In the era of social media, TikTok and other things, there's a lot of conversations that surround them, so it's generated a lot of interest. And then there's also a boom in the market of supplements and nutraceuticals and things like that that are purported to try to help peptide function. And so ideally it would, improve healthy aging and things like that. The trouble is that most of those are relatively unproven. There's a limited number of peptides that have gone through all the evaluation and approval process.
Oh, wow.
So there's quite a few claims, but not a lot of certainty for a lot of the products you hear about.
This is so interesting. Well, Dr. Young, we will continue back on this topic after we take a quick little break. And to our viewers, we're going to be talking more about peptides. Keep it here. Welcome back. We are back with Dr. Rodney Young as we continue our conversation talking about peptides. So, Dr. Young, what are the risks that people should be aware of when taking peptide products?
Well, for the peptides that have been through the FDA approval process and been studied, those risks are well defined. They're labeled. You can talk about them with your doctor or other healthcare provider, but typically that's the same conversation you would have about side effects or adverse reactions or allergies that might come along. The thing is that the unregulated peptide market, we don't have concrete answers to those questions. So there's some risk associated with the unknown. Now, some of those products get quite a lot of use, have used a while, and if there's no signal of harm in there, that offers at least some degree of reassurance. But there's definitely a component of the unknown. Another problem with the unregulated market is that a lot of times what the label says is in there and what is actually in there when it has some independent testing done, they don't always match up the way you would hope they do. So it may say there's a certain amount of this peptide and the product actually has somewhat more than the label says or somewhat less than the label says. So it's a little harder to predict the results associated with that.
Wow, okay. I am learning so much today. And Dr. Young, what should people keep in mind if they are considering using peptides?
Well, if they're thinking about using them, remember there's a lot that are very useful. So we've mentioned the GLP-1 agents. They're making a huge difference in people's health. So there can potentially be a lot of benefits associated with them. Ideally, using those that are manufactured, regulated, and better known are helpful and safer for us to do. If you take other medications, though, it's potential that you'll have some interactions, some effects. Some will maybe make it metabolize faster or slower, so it builds up to higher or lower levels, works differently in the body. So if you're considering adding something like this to your regimen, it's best to go see your doctor, your healthcare provider, to try to see if you can figure out what the likely effects are going to be and to monitor for any potential adverse things that occur.
And what would you say are some like red flags when it comes to like peptide products?
Well, I think if you are buying it online and it's, claiming to cure cancer or do other things, there's a pretty good chance it's not doing that. It would be very well known and very well regulated if it was. So I would watch out for sort of fabulous claims about how well they work. A lot of times products will market themselves as, studied in lab or research or things like that. That doesn't tell you that it was actually proven to work. It just means it was studied. And so those results are most often not published, so they don't undergo scientific review, the opportunity for other people to see, was that a fair study? Was the deck stacked against? So you have to be cautious about claims. And a lot of these products are about, fountain of youth sorts of ideas, healthy aging, beautiful skin, things like that. My biggest caution to my patients is if they choose to try something like that, where we can't rely on scientific evidence, at least be honest with yourself about how well it is or is not working. You take it for a period of time, and if 2 or 3 months later the only real benefit or the only real effect you notice is that your wallet is lighter, then I wouldn't necessarily continue taking it over the long term.
Yes.
But if you can clearly see benefits and you're tolerating it well and you're coordinating it with your doctor, I think that, some things are worth a shot. Just because everything hasn't been proven doesn't mean it won't work. It just means we don't know that it works and is safe.
Well, Dr. Young, thank you so much for coming on to Studio 4 and talking about peptides. We greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Of course, and stay with us. We have more Studio 4 coming up after the break.